Like if everything is performing about how you would expect it and you have no chances of going significantly up or down in terms of performance, you probably aren't being risky enough in what you're producing. For me, I think about content a lot, like just betting. If you're playing poker, you can do the right thing and still lose. And you can do the wrong thing and still win.
Welcome to the Fully Managed by Penji podcast, the podcast where we discuss marketing and business tips to help assist you on your business journey. I'm your host, Shannon, Penji's Partnership Coordinator, and I'm joined here with Sam Balter, Head of Content at Wistia, a popular video marketing platform. On this episode, Sam and I talk about content flops, ways to ensure your audience is receiving quality content, and how to take marketing inspiration from anywhere, even the Blue Man Group. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, Sam. Thank you so much for being on with me today.
Hello, Shem. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. Feeling very good.
Awesome. Your lighting is fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, always that's nice lighting. I'm in one of our little office studios, which is like a kind of glorified closet.
Yeah. That's kind of like my room. But okay, awesome. We'll just get right into it. So would you be able to tell us a little bit about who you are and you work at Wistia?
Sure. My name is Sam Balter. I head up content here at Wistia. So that basically manages our blog, our webinar program, as well as some of our research reports and other things like state of video. Before that, I worked at Zoom Info, where I basically did a lot of our media content, so social, videos, YouTube, all of that area. And then before that, I worked at HubSpot doing a bunch of jobs within like demand gen, sales enablement, and then eventually moved into content and specifically podcasting. So that's a little bit of background on me.
How did you get into content? Is it just kind of like something that naturally happened over the course of your career?
No, I mean, not really. Somewhat naturally in that, like, I did a lot of content working in demand generation, creating ebooks or webinars or things like that. Mm-hmm. And at HubSpot, I had an opportunity where I applied to host their kind of second podcast, which was called Weird Work. Mm-hmm. Then that was really successful and went really well. And so basically have been working in demand gen for a while and then was like, oh, this is awesome. I love it. Podcasts are dope. This is super exciting. Like, this is really fun. And so made a transition over to working more predominantly in content. So I was very fortunate to get a good opportunity, and that opportunity went really well.
Okay, so as head of content, do you do more things that you go and work with other companies with or businesses, or do you manage the content that you kind of post on your website or social media, or do all of the above?
So I don't manage as much of like our social media content here at Wistia. Like a lot of that social media content is derived obviously from larger pieces of content that I'm working on, webinars, clips, videos, blog posts, things like that. But overall, the social strategy, that's a different team at Wistia. But yeah, overall, like with the blogs, all of those things, I think it's a combination of, for us, it's like in-house team of like writers and things like that, writers, editors, and then we work with freelancers and other kind of agencies on specific projects. So Wistia tends to skew towards like using agencies or experts in certain areas.
Okay, incredible. I just wanted to narrow it down to like get a better idea of what we're working with. So great. Cool. Okay. So something that I was wondering is you guys have a really large learning center. How do you ensure that, especially with when it comes to content too, how do you ensure that the audience is receiving quality information for their work? And do you have some kind of feedback system, or like how do you keep track of that?
Yeah, the learning center is large. So there's a couple things with the learning center. Like, it's a large base of content. It's a mostly predominantly blog, but there's like the blog has lots of video content like as part of it as well. So there's lots of video content on blog articles. There's lots of other areas that we need to think about. The main thing that I think we drive as like what is the indicators of quality is we are really focused on what are the core questions that our audience is asking, like our customers, prospects, things like that, people who know Wistia, what are they asking? And then do we have an opinion on that thing? And so like we want to be able to answer those questions that people have, and those questions where we have a strong belief or a strong opinion. And so like I think things where for us, like the guardrails on that content is like when something is getting updated or refreshed, it's like, what is our expert opinion on this? What is our actual recommendation on this? Like, what do we like really digging into each part of every individual article to make sure that we're getting across a point of view? So that's kind of like the main thing we want to go. Like, I think an example is you could look at Wistia for something simple like here are the top 10 best like webinar cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Like an SEO version would just be like, here are the top 10 best ones. But we have a little bit more in each one where it's like, this is why we personally like this version. Mm-hmm. And I think the more you infuse that into your work, like your own personal opinion, your company's like positioning on stuff, the better off you're going to be. The second part of your question about like, how do we ensure, what kind of like feedback system do we have? Mm-hmm. A lot of that is like the analytics around content, right? Do we have any warning signs that the content isn't hitting? Low time spent on page, losing rankings on it. Any of those kind of like core things are stuff that we watch to ensure that it's like going across, like that we're not like losing or nothing is becoming too massively out of date. And then I think the last thing is like, our content, we just want to be really useful to our customers. Like our content needs to embed with our customers. So it's like if our customer success team uses the content, they get feedback from customers. And if the customers like the content, like that's a good feedback system for us. So overall, like I think there's a lot of things to look at, like how the content is performing, but those are just some of the ways that we think about guiding it.
How do you, okay, so you said that you kind of look for what people are asking, and that's kind of how you create content or articles about that specific thing. But what kind of places do you pull inspiration from outside of that when you create your content?
Oh, inspiration for our content. So I think for me, like, there's definitely, I would say, the batch of inspiration that's boring, which is SEO keyword research. Like, what are people searching for? What are we answering those questions, right? But then there's the kind of other layer of it, which would be like, what are other companies that I think do a good job of content, and what aspects of that do I like or want to emulate? So like an example, like I think would be, I think a lot about Gong. Gong has really good content where it is a lot of data-driven pieces of information that they extrapolate onto best practices that you should do. So it's like you can draw inspiration from that sort of framework that they use. But beyond that, like I look for a lot of inspiration for anything in marketing outside of business and outside of anything in our normal like B2B realm. And I think like anything that you can draw from other mediums or creative endeavors that you think is interesting, that inspires some sort of action, I think it's like a good way to look at it. So, for example, like recently, over the 4th of July, I went with my nephews to go see Blue Man Group. Blue Man Group, super silly, really funny, and
Love
bizarre.
Blue Man Group.
Yeah, like I went as a child. It was way weirder than I remember it, but it was still very, very fun. But at the beginning of Blue Man Group, like they have this ticker that goes across the sort of stage, and the ticker is saying things. Like the ticker is saying information to get the audience engaged. And obviously, the person who writes the things for the ticker is doing research on people's social media and what they're posting of the attendees in the audience, right? So they're in the audience, and it's like, John just bought a new shirt, you know, like, show us your fit, John. And then everybody's like, yeah, John, show us your fit. Someone's like, look at my new shirt, you know, and it's like, it's fun, it's entertaining, gets the audience going. But like, there's something about that where the idea of researching the audience beforehand and coming up with things to call out was really engaging to a bunch of children. So it'll be engaging to a bunch of adults too if you like started, let's say, a webinar and it's a small webinar with like 30 people that's about, video podcasting, I'd be like, oh, Shannon, I saw you just did this, like, congrats. Like, I could be like pulling stuff before that and bringing it into the, like, to get people engaged in the beginning of the webinar. So like, to me, like, there's always inspiration in the outside world, like outside of your business world, specifically anything in like arts, culture, entertainment that is worth bringing over into like B2B land.
I definitely agree with that. I actually had previously talked a few podcasts ago with, I don't know if you know of her, but Melissa Rosenthal from ClickUp. She draws inspiration from every avenue of entertainment that she likes. Like, we were talking about Chappell Roan and how her rise to fame, because she's in marketing. She was like, how did this happen? How can I draw inspiration from this? How can I implement this in my work? And I thought that was really cool. I think that if you don't stop getting inspiration from all these different places, then you'll never be uninspired, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, it's always like a way of just like, it also just makes anything you're doing a little bit more engaging, and it helps people to understand like, oh, okay, great. This is like, we want to structure it, or we want to borrow this one thing. Like, I think like there's a lot of things where another example is like, if you watch Twitch streamers, you get a lot of good ways to engage with the chat. Like, there's always like interesting things you can draw from those areas. So to me, it's something where it's like, when people are only drawing other examples from similar companies, it tends to end up in something pretty generic.
Do you incorporate any AI into your work, like when you create content?
Yeah, I think like AI is funny because I think this question is probably mostly about generative AI, but I feel like there's a lot of AI stuff that I use all the time that even pre-generative AI are just like not really that important. So, or like not as key to the way that my team works. So like for us, like we use simple AI tools. Like an example would be like, we use SEMrush, keywords like keyword like SEMrush, Google like plugin that does a check on your article to see how you're ranking. Like, that's an AI, and we use that regularly within our writing to offload some of that like SEO work. Another area that we've been using AI a lot more is Wistia obviously has lots of videos, and we host lots of webinars, and all of our videos automatically have AI transcripts as part of them. So a lot of what we're doing is like using those transcripts, those AI generated transcripts. Maybe we'll do AI chapters. Great. That gives me kind of a good outline for like an article. Oh, now I can use that AI transcript, and then I could plug that AI transcript into something like ChatGPT or Claude or something like that to say like, could you write me a blog article summarizing this most recent customer roundtable, right? So it's like a very simple flow. I don't really like using AI as like the primary writer. Like, at least like for me personally, it sometimes takes more time back and forth prompting than just sitting there and writing the thing. And so like, I think there's a ton of super cool uses for AI. I think we use it a lot of different ways in like video production and other areas. But for me in writing, I tend to use more of simple AI tools that have existed for a little while. And then also somewhat using like a lot of the transcripts from videos and then plugging those into something like Claude or ChatGPT. Just because then all of a sudden you're taking something that's like, if I didn't watch the webinar, or I didn't watch it particularly closely, and I need to get an outline together, like that's hours of work I've now reduced out into a much shorter time frame.
I think it definitely helps with that. I literally just talked to someone earlier about this same concept, about how I think a lot of people were worried that AI was going to replace humans, and I think people are still worried about that. But I think that the personal touch of being able to, one, I don't think it's there yet to be in place of a human in any avenue. Maybe like in a lab right now, someone working on that. Like maybe there's something, but right now, open to the public, I don't think there's anything that can really replace a person. And I think that the personal touch, especially with writing, is something that you can't recreate at this moment.
And it's like back to the previous thing I was saying, like our goal is basically to have opinionated content where we...
Yeah, like how do you...
like
how you kind of messed up.
Like GPT has never hosted a webinar. it like doesn't know that feeling. Like it doesn't know the feeling of like, you know, you go to a shoot and you forgot a key piece of equipment and now you have to make it work. Like we know that feeling because we're real humans. That feeling, in our opinion, is a key part of what differentiates our content. And so it's like, it works for certain things, but for what we're doing, it's not as critical.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that AI is really great at improving the speed of which you do things because it's very helpful with generalizing a lot of things and helping you find things. But it can't replace a person right now.
No, I do like it. Personally, for me, I do like it for analysis. So like I use it in two areas of analysis. Like one is here's a CSV of all this blog performance data, help me understand it, right? Like, so that's one area where I definitely use AI and like it and find that it is useful in terms of like generating information or helping to like reformat things in a quicker way than I did before. And so I think like that part of it is really nice. Another area that I've noticed is kind of cool to use AI is like for things that are live events, you have chat logs. And I think similar to the transcript, I'm going to take the transcript and then I'm going to like put it in here and then I'm going to say like churn out a blog post. It's also very interesting to pull out a lot of chats and Q&A, download those into a spreadsheet and then say like, can you give me some common themes that have come across in the chat? Can you identify like what was the most frequent thing that came up? Any insights on that? So things that I think are just like analyzing bulk amounts of data to find some specific trends, like one on the number side, and then the chat would be like the text side of things.
That's definitely an incredible way of using it. It's like weeding through information is something that's such a great thing. That's like probably like similar to the invention of the search bar but even more new age.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't around for the invention of the search bar, but I'm sure it was awesome. I'm sure people really liked that.
It was good. I saw it.
So speaking of new things, like AI being something that's new short form content obviously is very popular now, maybe probably the most popular form of content, especially with younger people. But even I think it's kind of translating into every age group. How have you adapted to this kind of popularity of short form content? Like was there a point where you were making videos that were more informative and kind of heavy, that were longer for people to watch, and did you kind of like switch, or how did you adapt to that?
Yeah, so short form content. So like I think one thing that's important to keep in mind is, yes, short form content is growing, right? It's one of the fastest growing in terms of like formats that we see. And we saw that like in State of Video, you see that companies creating short form video is like the biggest improvement or biggest percentage like gain versus like square or horizontal. But it's important to keep in mind that all video is consuming, or all video is increasing. Like every video type is increasing because everybody just watches more video, period. Like
Yeah.
the most popular shows are like, or podcast are, a lot of them are hours. You know what I mean? Like it's hours. And like there's long form, there's really well performing long form stuff. You even hear stuff from like somebody who's insanely in short form world, like Mr. Beast or something like that, moving to longer form content. Like all his content is starting to like be edited less cutty and like less like, ooh, quick cuts. And so like all forms of video are increasing. And so like that one thing I would just say is like, yeah, I pay very much attention to short form. I think it's something worth it, but I don't think it's necessarily something that's coming at the expense of, or people don't want longer form content. And like, I think there's certain things that we have noticed and we have like adapted to. In State of Video research, we found that like with partners from like TikTok and Hootsuite and other people, like generally short form content that is lower production quality and looks a little bit more authentic tends to perform better. So we've had short videos that we produce to promote things that are a lot more like somebody around the office or like somebody just filming it on their phone. So we've like leaned into what we see as like the short form content format, like looks a little bit more authentic, looks a little bit like more casual in terms of scripting. But I think for us, it's like you see certain things where, like Fix My Setup is a show that we make, like that's an entirely short form format show that we've sort of invested in versus some of our previous shows like Brandwagon or 110 100. Those have been big series where you have like 10 plus minute episodes. So overall for us, like I think short form is something that's like a really big opportunity, but we don't want to lose sight of like what conveys the value of our product and the information that we're trying to get across. And we know that if it's better to get it across in a 3 to 5 minute video, that's good. We'll do a 3 to 5 minute video. That was also like one of the best performing in terms of engagement. So it's one of those where I think about it, I consider it, like we try and create a mix of different pieces of content, but it's not something that I want to over rotate on and say like everything needs to be short form now.
Mm-hmm. I completely understand that. I think there's a happy medium. There's a lot of people that enjoy both or one or the other. I think it's very strange that I also think younger audiences probably aren't looking into Wistia because like younger, I mean like children. Because like obviously why would you need that? So that's definitely the era that I think will definitely make the switch of short form content is one of the only things that we consume now, maybe in like 10-20 years, which I'm not looking forward to, but yeah, I think I was just curious if you guys had made any additional changes, but you definitely answered that for me. I think that long form content, I think when you gave the example of Mr. Beast, which I thought was really interesting, I think that a lot of content creators that make shorter form content, it may be cheaper or less resources go into it. And I think when you become more popular, I think not only do you want to seem more professional, which I see commonly with YouTubers specifically, where they're like, I want to make more documentary style videos because I want to be taken seriously. And I think that's a super interesting switch that a lot of content creators do, is where they make this transition from more silly, more lighthearted videos to something that's more informative.
Yeah, and it's like for us, like it's definitely something where as long as we're helping people, sometimes you cut out, like when you make something really, really produced, you can create a lot of other confusion, right? Like you could just create confusion because there's like more money and like there's more things to deal with, and like you have more stakeholders, so the message is often less clear. So I think like there's a certain really appealing part to short form content where you're like, oh, I can quickly deliver a casual message that is like well spoken directly in the way that I would say it. That's not always like I work for a brand. I'm a marketer. It's like my goal is like the brand might want to not look like, it might want to look nicer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Just because looking like garbage, like just because think about somebody like Sam Bankman-Fried or whatever, who was walking around in like short shorts and like looking like a bum, and everybody loved him back like before he went to jail. Like, just because he's being successful looking like a bum doesn't mean that I want every business leader to look like a bum. Yeah, you know what I mean? Certain things where it's like if you are a representative or if you're making content like for the business, like the business might want to give off like a very polished professional air. Like I want to give off like I could have done this webinar from like the dumpster in the back of this building to make it look super authentic, but like I'm representing Wistia, so I'd rather be in this like nice studio.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely people change their image because they want to represent something that is better. The reality might not be the same thing, but that's okay. Gotta put up this facade anyway, or you just gotta, you gotta represent something. We don't want looking, yeah. So one of my favorite things that you guys do is the Fix My Setup series. I already even mentioned this to you, but how do you do you know the inspiration for this? Like, how did you know that this would perform well?
The Fix My Setup series is like, I'm still new. I'm pretty new to Wistia. So the Fix My Setup series was pre me and not something that I am like hugely driving.
Okay.
So just as a piece of information, there's that. But I think for us, like at a basic level, one of the things, Wistia is, I don't know, like 17 years old as a company and started as a hosting platform predominantly and has moved into like larger spaces. And I think one of the things about like the content Wistia produces is often to help people and make more videos, right? And so it's like the best way to get videos on your website is to make more videos. And so like we want to help people do that. And so with Fix My Setup, I think you have something where it's like we've expanded into, our product has expanded into webinars and basically create. So being able to create screen recording videos, okay? So the big hurdle, one of the big hurdles that people have about creating those is my setup looks ugly. I don't like the way I look on camera. And so like, if you think about Fix My Setup, one of the things we're really focused on there is like, there are small things you can do or products you can buy or things you can get or ways you can set things up so that you look better. And so it's one of those things where it's like the content is really delivering on a core promise that like aligns really well with something that our company is doing and our product solves. So it's like we want to help. It's like that's how we know there's really strong alignment on the content. And then like in terms of like, is it doing good? There's like a million performance metrics that you can look at of like engagement rates, play rates, cost per click in terms of like promoted ads and stuff like that. So like overall, I think like the main thing you're looking for, or at least that I see with Fix My Setup and other kind of content projects of Wistia, is like, is there really solid alignment between the information that's being delivered, how this relates to our customers, and how it relates to our product? And when you check all of those things off, like it feels like that's going to be a really good win. And then all of a sudden you're like, great. And metrics say that it's also working well.
That's really good. I mean, just for me specifically, I genuinely thought that was such a genius idea. I do love home improvement shows, and I think it just reminded me exactly of that. And I thought it was really awesome because it was such a unique way of translating it to a different subject that would grab someone's attention. It was also super helpful because I even looked at it and I was like, oh, this would actually be really helpful because my lighting is not good today. And, that would be really awesome. So I love something that's equally as educational as it is entertaining, because I feel like not everyone's able to do that very well. So yeah, and it was also short form in that it was only a few
very
minutes.
short.
Yeah,
very short. You can watch 6 episodes in a couple of minutes.
Exactly. It was awesome, which I really enjoyed that as well. So my last question that I have for you today is all of these things are very positive and I appreciate that. But if you have content that you create that doesn't do as well as you expect, how do you move on from that? Like, what's the process of damage control, I guess?
So what happens when my content flops? That's basically it. Yeah. Like if I have bad content, it never happens.
Always perfect 100%.
Always perfect 100% of the time. No, I mean, of course it's gonna flop. There's sometimes like the frequency that content is created is like, you're never gonna get 100% knocking it out of the park. That'd be crazy. It's also a bad indication that like you're not taking any risk. Like if everything is performing about how you would expect it and you have no chances of going significantly up or down in terms of performance, like you probably aren't being risky enough in what you're producing.
Yeah.
That being said, like for me, I think about content a lot like just betting. Like, so like if you're playing poker or something like that, you can lose, you can do the right thing and still lose, and you can do the wrong thing and still win. So, and I think like the question you need to ask yourself is like, did I do the right thing? And just for some odd reason, it did not end up working. So like poker, if you like bet all your money on, you get like a 2 and a 9 and you bet all your money on that, like that's a stupid idea. You might still win, you might still win, but like not necessarily. And when you lose, you shouldn't be particularly surprised by it. But it's one of those things where it's like you looking back, when I look back at content, I try and just as quickly go over like what went wrong internally. Like, did we not have alignment between teams? Did stuff feel watered down? Was distribution broken? Was something off? Like, what wasn't necessarily going well when this project started? And then just like review, kind of like any sort of athlete or anything like that. The thing happens, you review the tape, you determine what went wrong, if anything went wrong, and then you move on. So like a lot of the times you might just write a piece of content, publish it, do everything, it has great alignment, and then some competitor does something crazy on the same day, and all of a sudden you get drowned out in the noise. That's not, you did the right thing, but the end result didn't necessarily pay off. And so like, I think knowing the difference between like, when did you do the right thing and it flopped for whatever reason, and when did you not necessarily do the right thing and then it flopped because of that. And I think like when the main thing you could do is like not get super depressed or anything. Like you did not, like, people talk a lot about, oh, salespeople, they go through so much rejection. Oh, it's so much rejection on a daily basis to be in sales. I'm like, you work in you ever work in marketing? Like, people are rejecting your stuff like all the time. Like,
I know.
This isn't like you picked up the phone and dialed a number. This is like you spent like 3 days writing a report, and then somebody's like, I saw a misspelling in it, and then you're like, okay.
Oh, nice.
Like,
thank you.
I think you just need to have like thick skin that like things will happen, and you just got to know why it went wrong. And if you don't know, try and figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, don't spend too much time obsessing over it.
Yeah, that's great sound advice. Honestly, I think I agree. Being in marketing, there is a lot of rejection. There's a lot of just a lot of people will not like what you create, whether it's good or not objectively. I think that's just how it works. So that's inspirational. Just don't let it get to your head,
Don't let it get to your head. Just do not let it get to your head. Just move on. Things happen.
Yeah, the risk versus reward is something that's definitely, I 100% agree with as well. It's like, if you made a bad bet, then yes, it's 100% your fault. And if it didn't go well, but as long as you're looking into all of the facts, like everything that's trending at the moment, and then you did everything right, then obviously it's not going, if it doesn't go your way, that's just, maybe just coincidence.
Just coincidence sometimes.
Yeah. All right, well, that's actually all I have for you today. I really appreciate you answering all my questions. I think I learned a lot, and I'm really excited to look more into Wistia. Maybe I will do that, fix my setup.
Yeah, look into Wistia, fix my setup, make some nice videos. It'll be great. This was super fun. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And your lighting in your closet is beautiful. So don't be worried that it's a closet. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again.